This week on Top of Mind, we're sitting down with entrepreneur Becky Blades to talk about matchmaking and entrepreneurship, specifically mentoring. What does it take to be a good mentor? And what do you want to look for as a mentee in somebody to help you build your business? I'm Thom Ruhe, and this is Top of Mind. So I'm here today with entrepreneur, artist, and mentor, Becky Blades. Becky, thank you for coming in today.
Thanks, it's my pleasure.
So, we had a chance before the cameras were rolling to become acquainted and talk about your very impressive experience and CV as an entrepreneur, as a executive in your own firm. Congratulations on an acquisition that's usually trumpeted as quite a milestone accomplishment in a startup or in a business of your own. And now, as I understand it, you're kind of starting that next artistically inspired entrepreneurial endeavors and have quite the passion also for giving back in the capacity of a mentor.
Yes, I started one of those easiest type of businesses to start where you hang out a shingle doing that thing that you've done for someone else. Having had 5 or 7 jobs in the course of 5 or 7 years, I realized that I wasn't a very good employee and that if people would have let me run their companies, I think I would have been, a much better employee. But the writing was on the wall that I wanted to start my own agency. And having come out of advertising and public relations, I started a public relations firm with some niches, particularly in information-intensive businesses. So not toothpaste, but more aircraft or professional services, things that the public relations approach made more sense to promote telling stories and using information creatively. So,
can I ask you, if you don't mind me interrupting you there, what first drew you to public relations? Why that as opposed to marketing or sales or engineering or some other field?
Well, I went to school to be a journalist, saying I didn't care about money. And I was maybe 2 weeks out of school when I realized that was
money wasn't so evil.
That was fun to say in the post-Watergate era.
Right.
Journalism isn't nearly as fun as you think it's going to be. Being unbiased isn't nearly as easy as you think it's going to be. So I think what a lot of writers learn after they go into journalism school is that it's a really great education to learn how to be curious, to learn how to interview, to learn how to ask questions, and they try to teach you how to present an unbiased view, but it can't change your personality. And I'm very curious, and I love the art of advocacy. So a journalism background was a perfect background to, I think, start any number of businesses.
Well, PR, that's professional advocacy, in essence, as an art form. And certainly I could see why, with a journalism background, you'd have the requisite education to understand that better. So that was then, I guess, the inspiration, as we talked about, for you to start that company. And then was it like the industries that you supported and the types of companies you supported, was that just the serendipity of who were first clients, early adopters, or was it like, no, I want to support, aviation, for example?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I was just interested in everything I touched. I worked for a rock band right out of school. I worked for an insurance company. I worked for a building materials retailer that was a publicly traded company and got to see how big corporations worked. I came out of school in a recession, so it was difficult to find a job. And then I was ambitious and took every step up that I could take. And in that process, learned about a lot of different industries. So when I went to work for an advertising agency, the opportunity to work for a lot of different clients was just as invigorating. I find out now at my old age that I probably had very severe ADD and that the agency business and the the information business was a great way to keep me engaged and keep me satisfied without medication.
Yeah, it kind of feeds that, that ADD-ness. I can say that having my last company being an agency as well. So I like to say a skunk smells their own kind, and I'm right there with you. The diversity is always a lot of fun. But, the one thing I do know, if you are from the agency background, is that you have a great appreciation for creativity. And, I know my own struggles with our agency was really, I used to say it was a task to manage product from both the left side of the brain and the right side, the creative and the analytical side. Is that what has, fed your creative side and what you now pursue artistically?
Yes, the drive kind of helps feed the analytical side. I guess not that the drive helps satisfy those things that need to get done, the more technical sides. I'm driven enough to do the things you got to do. I don't like the finance side. An example of that was the first client I had in the aviation business. I went to work for an agency that was heavily into aviation because they had a global campaign that they were working on that was very exciting. At barely 30 years old, I didn't realize that I was entering an industry that didn't have many women and would probably not take me very seriously at age 30. So when you're driven and you're curious, you find out that there's a ticket into every room, and the ticket into most rooms in the aviation industry was a pilot's license. So even though it's very hard for my brain to work that way, I got my pilot's license.
Did you really?
Yes. And
that's quite an accomplishment.
I'm glad to have done that, and it opened the door for many other industries that happened to be male-dominated or intellectually snobbish, because they said, well, if she can get her pilot's license, or if that agency can do aviation, if they can promote a Gulfstream, then maybe they can promote my complicated technological service.
I have to tell you, that's a brilliant strategy, and you have no idea how much I agree with you, because about 25 years and 50 pounds ago, I was a pilot in the Air Force. So I know exactly how dominating that is, but if you did have that card, you had a card, you were a member of the club, and that's just a brilliant strategy that you figured that out. But again, I think it's a perfect example of how entrepreneurs work, right? Mm-hmm. As you were making that journey, did you have people along the way that helped you like with that or guided you? I don't know if we want to use the big M word yet, mentor, but in that capacity, when or how did that flex into your career?
Indeed, in fact, the owner of the agency that I was working for when that happened, it was an entrepreneur. It was a small agency. He was a military pilot. He encouraged me when I don't remember how the subject came up, but he said, you can take the time, we'll support it. But he also told me he would support me in starting my own agency when that time came. And that was, I think that was the biggest blessing of all. I knew when I was recruited to that agency that I had the itch and I wanted to start my own agency. I didn't know what it took. I knew I didn't want to freelance. And in our business, in the agency world, there's all kinds of things you could do. I could write from home. I never wanted to do that. I didn't want to, that felt like a demotion. I wanted to build something. And so I told him in the interview, I said, I love this campaign that you're working on. This sounds very exciting. I want to do it. But I need you to know that it'll be, when the campaign's over, I want to do my own thing. And he not only said that's okay, he said, when that time comes, I will help you. I don't know what it looks like, but the way they helped was they let me lease space. There was a natural break in the agency. Natural time in the economic environment, and they rented me space. I think I shared an accountant with them.
Oh, really?
They may have even subbed out some work to me initially, but I remember that it was 3-4 guys that had an ad agency, very specialized in aviation here in Kansas City, that helped launch my
really
business, which was a very
off the ground, pun intended.
Yes, pun intended.
That's fantastic, and it's that's a common path for a lot of entrepreneurs, that they get that lucky shot. And I have to say, for as many entrepreneurs as I've helped over the years, something fortuitous like that, the generosity of an entrepreneur that took that chance on you along the way is a very fortunate way that some people do get started. Now, I know you've taken that in all the years you've had since, and you've learned a great deal that you're kind of passionate about sharing, in the formal mentoring capacity now. I wonder if you could take a moment and share your thoughts around, well, let's start with what a good mentor is or does, or how mentoring done well looks.
I've heard a lot of people express the desire to be mentors after they have sold their businesses or stepped away and are craving that attachment to an enterprise, that attachment to the excitement. I think they're surprised to learn once they attach that they don't get to call the shots, that it isn't theirs. It isn't their energy to draw. It's the other way around. It's a very humbling thing. I think what the best mentors know, and I know this from being around mentors in the Hellsberg Entrepreneurial Mentoring Program, which is a great structure and forum for mentoring, is that the best mentors package themselves as what mentees want, and are able to then give them what they need. Mentees think they want cheerleading and attaboys and enthusiasm, and what they need is somebody to take their face, move it in the right direction. But that isn't necessarily gratifying to the mentor unless they're really pure and I think in their intentions. Right,
they're resolved to do this. You use the word that's not really gratifying. I kind of make an analogy to effective mentoring as basically effective parenting. Mm-hmm. A lot of what I've learned to be a mentor, I've learned as being a parent, a father of 3 children, a husband of 20-some years. I should know how many, but my wife doesn't watch this anyhow, so that's not a problem. How do you feel about that analogy, or do you make others that, because, being a good parent isn't about being a friend. Mm-hmm. It's not about always, sure, you have to give the adulation, you have to give the encouragement along the way, but sometimes you also have to be the sounding board and the swift kick. Do you have thoughts around those lines?
Exactly. There's a parenting book that's called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk, and I think that would be a great title of a mentoring book. How to talk so mentees will listen and listen so mentees will talk. It's all about getting mentees to put their worst foot forward, as Barnett Hellsberg is wont to say. But it's an exchange. It's almost a trade. If you want mentees to do what they need to do and be candid, a mentor needs to pay for that with confidentiality and trust. And it doesn't happen immediately. It doesn't happen in the speed dating stage. It happens over time, and it certainly is not going to happen, going back to the parenting,
sure,
if the kid's expecting to be smacked down or disciplined, he's not going to tell you the problem he's having. So listening is always first. Use the word sounding board.
Sure.
I think a sounding board is the best thing a mentor can be. It's harder than it looks. It requires not only active listening, but a managing of those tough questions as the mentee tests the mentor. And there's one thing we have to remember when we're talking about, there's mentors in all walks of life. But entrepreneurial mentoring, just think about that. You've got two of the most independent, driven spirits, people
Type
that
A's,
think
for
they
sure.
type A's. Now there can be all types of different personalities, but chemistry has to be there.
You know, one of the topics that we get here a lot at the Kauffman Foundation is, okay, so generally speaking, I understand as an entrepreneur I should have mentors, but a lot of times we also talk about advisory boards. And I'm curious to know your take on that. Like, does having a mentor preclude the need for an advisory board? Do you even believe in advisory boards and that there's value there? Mm-hmm. You know, what's been your experience on that, and what would you offer to aspiring entrepreneurs on that topic?
I think advisory boards are very valuable. The ability to put people around the table that care about your business, that know you as in an advisory way is so valuable. A mentor should be part of that advisory board. I think it's a great opportunity for the mentor to hear the perspective of others. I had an advisory board at which I invited my top managers at times. It allowed both the advisors and the mentor to meet some of the people that I was talking about, developing. It allowed my mentor to be a better mentor. That's one thing a mentor can really help with. A mentor can help imagine where you are in life when you start your first business. You're usually young, you think you're connected, but it's usually in your industry. You don't know what you don't know. So a mentor can really help you find the right kind of accountant, help you find somebody in a vertical industry that might be a growth category for you. So those might be the same people that staff your advisory board. But I think that's one of the key roles that a mentor can fulfill is to...
All right, well then, so trick question. Mm-hmm. Is there something you would be willing to share or draw from your mentor that you wouldn't share or ask from a board of advisors?
I think a board of advisors doesn't have to hear feelings. I think I think a mentor needs to hear feelings.
Okay.
I think one of the best questions a mentor can ask is, how do you feel about that? Tell me that story, start from the beginning. I'm not going anywhere. And to let the entrepreneur kind of get under their frustration, their fear. To me, now that might be a personal opinion. That might be, sure. But I think emotions make us do stupid things as entrepreneurs, and a mentor is often a person can help us slow down, get on track with what we were thinking when we did something, slow down enough to realize maybe we're in the middle of making a mistake and we have time to stop it. So that's
the invitations haven't gone out for the wedding.
Right, right. So only that kind of patient listening that a mentor can do can help you get to the bottom of that. And an advisory board, I believe, should be all business.
Got it. Well, listen, I really want to thank you for sharing your thoughts today. I mean, it was a real thrill for me to sit and meet with you, knowing that the entrepreneurial experience you've had here in Kansas City and beyond. I wish you great success with your artistic ambitions. I would look forward to a second time to get you kind of in the chair for top of mind and other uses, and really follow on how you're doing with this. And hopefully both mentors and mentees can get something out of this conversation we had today. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom.